Recovered Journal of Elias Vane. Bureau Summary. These pages were recovered in 1873 from a wash shelter beyond the Mercer rail cut, after a takedown order was carried out against hostile, later catalogued as the Lantern, Saint, one of the Crowned. The leaves below are arranged in the order in which they appear to have been written. Page 1. May 11, 1873. I begin this account because I know the signs and have no confidence that I shall remain fit to speak for myself much longer. If the pages are found, let them be read as a journal and not corrected into sermon or bureau notice. Men who came late to the matter have a taste for smoothing it. They like a single cause, a single blame, and a clean moral at the end. There has never been any such neatness in this business. I was born in 1848, in a refinery town west of the rail cut. My father hauled sealed cases for a syndicate contractor. My mother kept the chapel books and washed the cloths for Reverend Hale. We lived above the lower ditch. In wet weather, the yard took a green sheen at the edges, and the roots in the cellar would not keep. When I was a boy, the common name was Saint Fire. That was the household name. Women used it over the sick. Men used it when they wished to sound grateful. Small portions were kept in glass vessels on mantels and in wall niches. Mothers tied filings of it in cloth and hung them about a child's neck. Some churches put it behind colored panes, so that the room would shine pale, and the congregation might say, "The earth itself bore witness." The learned men called it Radiant Extract. That was the ledger name and the contract name. It was painted on crates and written on invoices. Doctors, surveyors, chemists, and company men used it in their speech. Radiant Extract paid wages. It was mixed into tonics, lamp compounds, preserving oils, and certain medicaments. The improving sort said the earth had kept up a gift until the proper age for its use. The men by the settling pits had another word. They called it rot shine. That was the honest word. Page 2. May 11th, 1873. Saint Fire was ordinary to us. That must be understood. No one in my childhood spoke of it as an intrusion. It belonged to daily life. Men argued over its color and strength the way they argued over iron, flour, or lamp oil. Old miners kept little shrines of it below ground and touched their hats before descending. Pilgrim women swore a weak preparation eased labor pains. Men with ruined joints rubbed Saint Fire oil into the swelling and said it brought them through winter. Many believed that because it came from the earth, it must be good. That conceit did us as much harm as greed. People mistook burial for blessing. They thought a thing hidden in deep rock had been stored for our use. No one cared to ask whether it had been kept down for a reason. The first signs were all about us, and so were treated as common annoyance. Fish came up from the creek with sores under the belly. Mules were foaled with clouded eyes that caught the lamplight. Men lost teeth too young. Nails blackened from the root. Meat kept too long in cold weather, and then spoiled in an hour. Water in the lower ditches steamed in winter, and laid a pale skin over the reeds. No single sign was enough to move a town. That is how a calamity passes for custom. Men accept one offense, because they have already accepted the last. Page 3. May 12, 1873. The church favored Saint Fire, while it remained a symbol, and not a reckoning. Reverend Hale preached that deep things were not wicked merely for being deep. He said, "The Lord hid many good things from lazy men, and that only an age of iron and discipline would be fit to raise them up." He kept a Saint Fire lantern in the vestry, and let the children watch the light move through its etched glass. He called it a token that God had not withdrawn his hand from the soil. Then came Mrs. Harrow. She took fever in autumn, then swelling of one arm, then a stiffness of the mouth. A day later she appeared to rally. Half the town called it Providence. I saw her in the market 2 days after, and knew the look of her was wrong at once. Her shawl was pinned badly. Her mouth sat too still. She knew me, and spoke my name, but in such a way that it felt fetched from inside my own skull, rather than remembered in any human manner. That same week she bit through her husband's cheek while he slept. They called it brain fever. The syndicate sent men, then a city doctor, then others with polished cases who did not stay to eat. They inspected homes, paid for silence, took scrapings and samples, sealed papers, and said the trouble was local. They said some lower grades of radiant extract had been cut with waste or mishandled in storage. They said the matter would be corrected. Truth was dear. Lies were cheaper and packed more readily. Page 4. May 12, 1873. By 1859, the lower wards had burial fires twice a month. By 1861, children were forbidden the settling pits, whether they understood the reason or not. By 1862, men were disappearing into the East Ridge Clinic and returning pale, harder in manner, and marked with punctures at the throat and elbow. That was when I first heard the word serum. Not in chapel, not at table, in work talk. The report was that the bureaus and the companies had found a way to harden select men against the sickness. Ordinary people were said to be too weak for the treatment, but certain laborers, guards, and takedown men might bear it well. The old miners called it another refinement fraud. The desperate called it hope. Preachers called it trial. Chemists called it progress. The men who took it stopped falling to the common course of the sickness. That impressed everybody. What impressed few, because few wished to dwell on it, was that such men no longer looked entirely right in certain lights. Their veins darkened. Their eyes kept a catch of shine after sunset. Their sleep altered, their temper altered. Some carried little relics of bone, wire, old medals, iron scrap, and carved wood against the skin, and said such things steadied the head. Those were the first effigies, though the word was not yet used with any order. Page 5. May 13, 1873. The town continued on. That part is often told falsely by men who came later and wanted the matter to sound more dramatic than it was. They imagined that when the plague first took hold, all common life ceased in a day. It did not. Freight still moved. Wages were still docked. Sermons were still preached. Bureau clerks still copied forms at their desks, while rot-shine crept through the ditches below their windows. My father died in 1864. He did not die by cave-in or furnace burst or anything fit for broadside print. He rotted inward by degrees. His gums blackened. He sweated cold. He lost weight, though he still ate. On the morning before the end, he sat upright on the bed with steady hands and told my mother not to let them take him to the clinic. That was his fear at the last, not death. Processing. We buried him ourselves beyond the line stakes. The ground was stiff, and the shovel rang against stone. He came back the second night, not dead in the common sense, nor living in the old one. I found him at the cellar door, nails torn away, lips ragged to the teeth, trying to keep himself from making a sound. That is what has remained with me longest. He was not raging then. He knew enough to fear what he was, and to fear frightening us. Besides, my mother struck him with the axe before I could move. After that, I ceased to think Saint Fire holy. I did not cease to live in the order it had made. Page 6. May 13th, 1873. In 1865, the Bureau outpost was made proper, with armed men, holding pens, quarantine rooms, and a dispatch tower. They were not yet formally called hunters, but all knew what they were for. They were men who could go into the bad districts longer than ordinary men, stand near the pits without retching blood, and put down the changed when called. The first takedowns were local in those years. A house, a cellar, a tunnel mouth, a clinic room. Once a whole family, shut together after the grandmother turned first, and the others would not leave her. There is no honor in how I write of it. It was work, hard and foul work, but work all the same. That is how men endure a thing beyond reason. They put it under duty and give it a number. I took the serum in the first months of 1866. Not out of belief. There was nowhere else left to stand. My mother was gone by then, taken in a fever bloom that stripped her speech and left her staring at the wall as though she heard movement within it. On the fourth night, she spoke my name in my father's voice. I left the room and called for the bureau surgeon. I did not return. The serum burned through me. What I recall most is not pain but sharpening. Smell altered first, then heat, then distance. I could hear a man's tread through timber, and tell by scent whether a ditch carried common water or rot-shine runoff. Afterward, the shine in the pits no longer turned my stomach. I could remain near a fresh turn longer than ordinary men before fear took hold. That was the bargain. The bureaus did not cure men. They selected for tolerance. We were not saved. We were made serviceable. Page 7. May 14, 1873. By then the church had split. Reverend Hale held that saint fire was still a grace, only abused by greed and over-refined by fools. Others said the glow was a false light, an old buried lure, a thing kept below by Providence until man in vanity cut it loose. The chapel windows were broken in a night fight, and one deacon lost an eye. He later joined a takedown line and died in a grain store. There were no clean parties left, only differing forms of compromise. Then came 1867. Men who write public histories like to put a single cause to it. One breach, one rail spill, one refinery blast, one flood opening a burial trench. Such accounts are neat and easy to print. They are false in their neatness. The cataclysm was not a spark. It was the year all the soaked cloth took fire. Outbreaks broke across districts too quickly to hide. Holding cells failed. The East Ridge Clinic burned with patients still within. Wagons of radiant extract overturned on the wash road and spilled into the basin that drained 2 worker quarters. A sermon procession in the lower ward turned violent before it reached Chapel Square. Graveyards that had held uneasy dead for months gave way after hard rain. And through all of it, the glow remained fair to the eye. That undid many men. Had it been foul from the first, fewer would have trusted it. But saint fire shone through smoke. Rot-shine glimmered in gutters and wheel ruts. Radiant extract lit broken glass and wet rail, with a beauty that made fools kneel to it, even after it had taken their kin. The first official takedowns were called that summer, though the labor itself was older than the word. That year, the title hunter became formal. The bureaus wanted a better word than color, and a prouder one than disposal hand. Hunter sounded active and fit for badges. Men will bear almost any degradation if given a title for it. Page 8. May 14, 1873. We were issued marks, route papers, regular serum loads, and approved effigies according to district need. There were kinds of them by then. Bone wards for close work, ash charms for spoor and tracking, iron saints for steadiness of nerve, knotted relics for the breath in rot-shine fog. None was a blessing. Each was a burden chosen for use. The common dead we came to call ghouls after a time, though the word rose from field talk before it entered the reports. Ghouls are poor vessels. They rot fast, move badly, split at the joints, and carry only a shallow occupation. There is little wit in them, only appetite, recoil, and scraps of old habit. One sees a ghoul still trying to rake straw, pull a chain, ring a bell, or scratch at a door, because the flesh remembers labor after the name is gone. Elites are worse because more remains. A butcher that still corners like a butcher. A guard that still checks an entrance. A preacher that still lifts his arm as if calling a crowd. Better flesh, deeper saturation, stronger occupation. Some of them learn. Those are the ones a young hunter remembers by night. The first of the crowned I saw was at Mercer Refinery in the winter, after the Cataclysm year. It had been a hunter named Joel Task. I knew him by the left hand, 2 fingertips gone from an old press accident. His body had gone wrong in a fashion the common dead never managed. There was too much of him, and too much intention left in the arrangement. The jaw had split and sealed itself wider. One shoulder had overgrown into a plated mass with a dull green under the flesh. Yet he walked with Joel's gait, and when he halted at a distance, I knew he knew me. A crowned is not merely a larger infected. A crowned is what comes when enough memory remains to carry purpose, enough corruption remains to direct force, and enough mutation remains to make ordinary killing uncertain. Some were once hunters. Some came out of the old clinic trials and bureau experiments. Some, I think, were always bodies apt for such use. Page 9. May 15, 1873. Men ask when a hunter becomes crowned. They want a measure, a count of exposures, a number of marks survived, a tally of effigies borne. There is no such clean line. The serum was never an antidote. It is a harness. It slows the common course of decay and hardens the flesh against ordinary collapse. But it does so by making the body more fit to hold a shaped corruption. A hunter remains useful so long as what is within him can be steadied, fed, and kept in order. When that order fails, the very thing that preserved him becomes the means of his advancement into something worse. That is why some say the crowned are fallen hunters. They are right. That is why others say the crowned first appeared among the failed antidote trials at the Black Clinics and East Ridge Works. They are right as well. The years after the Cataclysm were called the Hunt Era by some, though seldom with cheer, unless a paymaster stood near. Trade routes shifted. Valleys were emptied. Rot-shine drains were marked with iron posts and prayer knots. Syndicates hired private lines to keep extraction moving in safer seams. Churches split into harsher doctrine. Children grew up knowing the smell of burn oil and the sound of take-down bells. I lasted longer than many. That was not virtue, only tolerance. My field record was good enough. Clean entries, confirmed removals, few breaches of conduct, Better than average rotshine tolerance. Sound relic discipline. I trained 6 younger hunters. 4 are dead. 1 bloomed and was put down in a freight yard. 1 fled south and may yet live if the wastes did not take him. In 1872 the dreams began. Not common dreams. Ordered things. Rooms I had never entered, yet later found below old clinic floors. Voices speaking in my own cadence before I answered aloud. A sensation, repeated and exact, that my bones were being counted from outside. I told no one. Page 10. May 15, 1873. That too is part of how the crown come about. Not by bureau deceit only, by field deceit, by private deceit. A marked man knows what comes of admitting weakness. He is benched if fortunate, processed if not, sent to annex work if worse luck follows. So when the dreams harden, when a lamp seems to lean toward him, when his reflection answers a beat too late, a practical man says nothing, then comes withdrawal. That is the last stage in which a man still shows himself any mercy. A hunter near the end does not remain among his squad if he has sense enough left to dread what follows. He draws off. At first from caution, then from shame, and at last because some older instinct has begun its work and urges him toward stone, timber, cellars, culverts, mine cuts, and any other place that narrows the world and puts walls between him and human company. Part of him still hopes for cure. Part hopes to be found by the common dead before the deeper change sets firm. I filed no report. I sought no surgeon. I left before dawn with my route papers, 2 loads of serum, dry bread, lamp oil, 1 bone ward, 1 ash charm, and 1 iron saint. I came to an old wash shelter beyond the Mercer rail cut, half sunk in the bank, 1 room above and 1 below, close enough to the runoff that no family would choose to lodge there. I barred the upper door and dragged the table over the cellar. Hatch. I mean to keep these pages together in oilcloth when I have done. If I remain steady enough tomorrow, I shall write again. Page 11. May 16, 1873. The change does not begin in frenzy. It begins in preference. Dark before daylight. Stone before open ground, quiet before speech, corners before doorways. A wish to crouch, to brace, to wait, to go lower. Then the back pains. The jaw works of its own accord, teeth loosen. The hands remain cold and strong. Hearing lengthens. Smell becomes a tyranny. This is why the dens are found where they are. Not because the changed become architects. Because the turning man seeks shelter before he loses the habit of being seen. If these pages are found in such a place, remember that the den was a refuge first. I do not know how long I slept today. The lamp is lower. The ash charm cracked by noon. The iron saint grows warm against the breast toward evening. There are voices outside at times, though I do not trust myself to say whether they are in the yard or only in the boards. My appetite is wrong. My sleep is wrong. I woke standing. Twice I found the lower hatch open after barring it shut. The siren still holds enough order for writing, but not enough for recovery. The effigies steady a man, then strain him, then begin, at last to answer something besides the hand that wears them. Any hunter who says different is either lying or newly marked. Page 12. May 16, 1873. Let this be kept plain. Ghouls are the quick ruin. Elites are those in whom more remains. The crowned are what becomes of marked men when plague, serum, and held corruption come to a stronger agreement than the man can maintain. There is little mercy in that agreement. If Carter lives, or if any bureau hand that knew my line reads this, do not bring surgeons, do not take scrapings, do not haul what is left of me back to a clinic bench, seal the place, and burn it. If the fire takes, leave ash. If it does not, mark the ground and post iron. I shall wrap these leaves in oilcloth now, and set them in the wall brace above the lower room, where the damp has not yet reached. There is light in the cracks of my hands. The jaw will not rest. When the wind turns, I can smell men at distance through the boards. I am going below after I have hidden these pages. If I come back up, it will not be for cure. Saint Fire was the worship name. Radiant Extract was the trade name. Rotshine was the honest name. The cataclysm of 1867 was the year men lost the right to say they did not know. The siren delays. It does not pardon. The effigies burden. They do not bless. Hunters are marked men living on borrowed order. And the crowned were men first. That is enough. Archivist's note. Recovered in 1873 from a boarded wash shelter beyond the Mercer rail cut, after a takedown order was carried out against the hostile later catalogued as the Lantern Saint, one of the crowned. The upper room contained burned bedding, spent siren glass, broken effigy remains, and the pages above wrapped in oilcloth within a wall brace. Damage below prevented full recovery of the body site. Internal particulars agree in the main with bureau logs. Attributed to Hunter Elias Vane, this account bears upon a field pattern long denied in public notice. Marked hunters near terminal loss often withdraw from town, squad, and family, and are afterward found in isolated shelters, cellars, mine cuts, culverts, and abandoned works that later serve as den sites for the crowned. The Bureau maintains many things.